I found out exactly what my parents were willing to do to me at 5:47 on a Wednesday morning, with a phone in one hand and a cold cup of coffee in the other. The banking app showed one red line across the screen. Access denied. My grandfather's trust, the money he left me, $520,000, was frozen overnight. I called my mother first. My father took the phone. He told me, soft as a Sunday, that they had had to step in. That family came first. My mother said I was not thinking clearly, that I should let them manage it. I did not argue. I put on my blazer. I drove to the bank. What the manager found in that document, 4 days old, is the reason I no longer answer their calls. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where we sit with the quiet women who get underestimated and watch what happens when they stop explaining themselves and start letting the facts speak. If a story like this has ever lived in your own family, you already know the feeling in your chest right now. Drop a comment, tell me where you are listening from, and be sure to subscribe. Let me take you back to the version of my family I still believed in, which was only about a month before that red line ever appeared. I am April Onley. I am 34. I live alone in a small house on the north side of Linwood, Ohio, with a driveway that floods every spring and a job most people find boring at parties. I am a forensic accountant. What that means, in plain words, is that I read numbers other people are trying to hide. Companies hire my firm when money goes missing. Families hire us when an elderly parent's savings drain out faster than a body can spend them. I spend my days inside other people's worst weeks, following dollars the way a tracker follows a limp through snow. That month, I was closing a file on a woman in her 80s whose grandson had moved $40,000 out of her account in small, careful pieces. He thought small was the same as invisible. It is not. Small is just slow. I had learned a long time ago that people lie loud and numbers lie quiet, and the quiet ones are easier to catch because numbers do not get embarrassed. People do. My family thought I made spreadsheets. My mother once told a neighbor I worked in billing. I never corrected her. It seemed harmless then, the way a small misunderstanding seems harmless right up until the day you need someone to know exactly who you are. I let them think I was the daughter who was bad with money. I let them think it for years. The money was never supposed to be a secret, and it was never supposed to be a weapon. It came from my grandfather. Walt farmed 40 acres east of town for most of his life, corn and soybeans, and one stubborn apple orchard he refused to tear out even when it stopped paying. He was my mother's father, and he was the only person in my childhood who ever asked me a question and then waited for the whole answer. When his knees gave out and the work got too big for him, he sold the land. He did not split the money among his children the way everyone expected. He put most of it into a trust at Linwood County Savings, and he made one name the beneficiary, and the name was mine. People in my family have a theory about why. The theory is that I was the favorite. The truth is plainer and less flattering to them. I was the one who stayed. When Walt got sick, I was the one who drove him to his appointments and learned the names of his medications and slept in the chair by his bed the last 3 nights of his life. The others sent flowers. I keep copies of everything, a habit from work that bled into my whole life. So somewhere in my desk at home, there is a folder with every paper Walt ever signed, every statement, every letter. I did not think I would ever need it. I thought I was just being tidy. Walt set the trust up with a lawyer named Ed Keller, a careful man with a careful office, and Ed told me once that the document was watertight. I believed him. I had no reason yet to test it. 2 weeks before he died, Walt gave me his watch. It is a brass pocket watch, heavier than it looks, with a hairline scratch across the face from a fall it took some time before I was born. The thing runs 2 minutes slow. It always has. When I was a girl, I used to think that was a flaw, and one afternoon I took it to the drugstore counter and asked the man there to fix it, and Walt found out, and was not angry, just amused. He took it back and put it in his vest pocket and told me to leave it be. A slow clock is still honest, he said. It is not lying to you. It is just 2 minutes behind, every minute of every day, and you can count on that. You cannot count on a liar. You can count on a slow clock. I did not understand him then. I was 9, and I wanted things to be right, not honest. He pressed the watch into my hand in the hospital and closed my fingers over it and did not say anything sentimental, because that was not his way. He just made sure I had it. After he was gone, I started carrying it. I do not wind it for accuracy. I wind it so it keeps moving. When something at work goes wrong, when a file will not close, when I cannot find the dollar I know is missing, I put my hand in my pocket and feel it ticking against my fingers, 2 minutes behind and steady as a heartbeat. I had no idea, that month, how much I would need to remember what he said about honest clocks. I just liked the weight of it. My parents' house always smells like lemon furniture polish. My mother, Lorraine, has cleaned it the same way for 40 years, and the smell hits you at the door like a held breath. That Sunday, the table was set the way she always sets it, plates squared to the edge, forks lined up like soldiers. We ate pot roast and talked about nothing, and then somewhere between the meat and the pie, my mother set down her glass and said the thing she always circled back to. My father always played favorites with that will, she said. I said nothing. She said it lightly, the way you say a thing you have decided is just true, and she looked at her own hands when she said it. Some people in this family got more than their share. My father, Gerald, did not look up. He has gotten quieter in the last year, heavier in the shoulders, and that night he kept his eyes on the table. There was a stack of mail by his elbow, turned face down, and I noticed the top envelope had the navy blue corner of a bank logo on it before he slid it under a catalog without thinking. I noticed because noticing is what I do. I did not think much of it then. A man can have mail. A mother can be bitter about her father's choices. None of it felt like the beginning of anything. It felt like the same low weather that had hung over that house for years, the kind you stop seeing because it never quite becomes a storm. I helped with the dishes. I drove home. The lemon smell stayed in my coat for 2 days, the way it always does, and I did not think about the envelope again until it was much too late to wonder what was in it. My sister Renee came by my office the following Tuesday, which she never does. Renee is 4 years older than me and lives 2 towns over in Hartwell, where she handles paperwork at a title and escrow company, the kind of place that pushes property deals across the finish line. She was bright that day, brighter than the visit called for, and she brought coffee she knew I would not drink. She asked how work was. Then she asked, the way you ask a thing you have practiced sounding casual about, which bank Grandpa's trust was parked at. I told her. She nodded like it did not matter. She asked whether I had anybody named on the account besides myself, a backup, somebody who could step in if I got hit by a bus. I said no. She said that was probably something I should fix, that she dealt with this kind of thing all day, that she knew a notary named Hal who was good and fast and did not charge family. I said I would think about it. After she left, I sat with the strange aftertaste of the conversation because nothing about it had been about me. It had all been about access. I made a note in my own head, the way I make notes about files, to go home that week and lock down the account settings and change my passwords and add the 2-step login I kept meaning to set up. Then a deadline landed on my desk that afternoon. a fraud file with a hard court date, and the week swallowed itself the way weeks do. I told myself I would handle the account on the weekend. I am very good at handling other people's money on time. My own, it turned out, I had left a few days too long. The red line came on a Wednesday. I had not even sat down yet. I was standing at my kitchen counter, phone in one hand, the first cold mouthful of yesterday's coffee in the other, when I opened the banking app out of plain habit. The screen loaded, and then a band of red dropped across the top of it like a gate coming down. Access denied. Account restricted. Contact your branch. I set the coffee down very carefully because the alternative was to throw it. $520,000, and I could not see a cent of it. I called my mother before I let myself think. She picked up on the second ring, already awake, already braced, which I would understand the meaning of much later. My father took the phone from her. His voice was soft, almost kind, the voice he uses for funerals. "We had to step in," he said. "Family first." My mother's voice came from somewhere behind him, closer to the phone than it should have been if she had really handed it over. "You are not thinking clearly," she said. "Let us manage it." I stood in my own kitchen and felt the whole shape of it arrive at once, the way the missing dollar always arrives at once after hours of looking. They had done something to my account. They were calling it love. I did not raise my voice. I have learned that raising your voice tells the other side exactly how scared you are, so I said the only thing I trusted myself to say. "Okay," I said. "I heard you." Then I hung up, and I took a screenshot of the red line, and I wrote down the time, and I went to find my keys. I put on my blazer. I drove to the bank. The branch manager at Linwood County Savings is a woman named Carol Vance, and she has worked that counter long enough to remember opening Walt's accounts. I set my driver's license on the counter face up, the way you set down a card you are not going to pick up again until you get an answer. I told her my account was frozen and I wanted to know who had frozen it. She did not give me the runaround. She typed, and her face did the small, polite thing faces do, and then it stopped doing that. She turned her monitor partway toward me, the way you turn a thing toward someone before you have decided whether you should. On the screen was a document I had never seen in my life, a power of attorney. My name was at the top of it, granting my father authority over my accounts. There was a signature at the bottom that was supposed to be mine. The date on it said the document had been signed 3 weeks earlier. There was a notary stamp beside the signature, a name in a circle, Hal Bruner. I looked at it for a long moment. I did not say it was forged, though it was, because I have learned never to make the accusation before you can make the case. Carol clicked once more into the file's properties, the back end of the document, the part most people never look at. Created, modified, author. She read whatever was there, and her hand went still on the mouse, and she stopped narrating to me the way she had been narrating. She did not say anything. She turned the monitor a few degrees back toward herself, then a few degrees toward me again, as if she could not decide who was supposed to be seeing this. Whatever was in that file's history was not what the date on its face had promised. I watched a careful woman go quiet, and in my line of work, a careful person going quiet is never nothing. It is the loudest sound there is. Carol asked me to sit down, and she pulled a chair around to her side of the counter, which is not standard, and that told me she had decided I was on her side of something. She explained it plainly. The power of attorney had been submitted to the bank 4 days earlier, along with a request to restrict my access and route management of the trust to my father. The document itself, the file, had been created 4 days ago too, but the date printed on its face, the date beside my forged signature, said 3 weeks. Carol said the two dates did not match, and a careful person notices when a thing claims to be older than it is. She said the signature looked, in her words, a little too even. I knew what she meant. Real signatures wander. They speed up and drag. A traced one holds its breath. I told her then what I do for a living. I told her I am a forensic accountant, that I spend my days proving exactly this kind of thing for other people. And I watched her look at me the way the bank teller never had, the way my own family never had, like the word for me had just changed in her head. She said the account would stay frozen, but now it would stay frozen as part of a fraud review, which is a very different kind of frozen. One protects them, one protects me. She printed me a copy of the document and slid it across the counter, and I folded it once and put it in my blazer pocket next to the watch. 4 days old, I said, mostly to myself, dated 3 weeks back. That is not a typo. That is a timeline. Carol did not disagree. She just started a case file and asked me to spell my grandfather's name. I did not cry in the car. I want to be honest about that, because people expect tears here, and the tears did not come the way they were supposed to. What came instead was the cold, narrow focus I get at work when a file finally cracks open. I drove home and I went straight to the desk in my spare room and I pulled out the folder, the one I keep because keeping copies is just who I am now. I spread Walt's old papers across the floor, the trust, the closing documents from the land sale, an old birthday card I had signed for him years back. Then I laid the forged power of attorney down beside them, and I looked at my signature on each one. My real signatures all leaned the same wrong way, the way mine always do, the lowercase letters crowding at the end like people late for a bus. The signature on the power of attorney did not crowd. It sat. It had been copied slow and careful from something, and as I knelt there, I realized I knew exactly which something. Renee had asked to borrow a stack of family papers 2 months ago, to scan them, she said, for a family album nobody had ever mentioned before or since. She had taken them for a week. She had given them back. One of those papers had my signature on it, clean and flat and easy to trace on a light box, the kind of light box a title office has sitting in the back room. It was not my mother who had drawn that signature. My mother does not have the patience. It was my sister. The notary was a man named Hal, she had told me about herself, sitting in my office drinking coffee I did not want. I did the boring things first because the boring things are what win. I called Carol back and I filed a formal report with the bank's fraud unit, the same kind of report I help other people file, except this time the name in the complaint box was my own family's. Then I called Ed Keller. He remembered me before I finished saying my name. I read him the power of attorney over the phone, slowly, and he made a small sound in his throat, like a man stepping on a nail. A power of attorney is presumptively void if the signature is forged, he said, and even